Russian President Vladimir Putin will be in India on Thursday. This will be his second visit in 4 years. This is happening at a time when Jared Kushner and Witkoff are in Moscow. Now, these are important and significant geopolitical events. These meetings are something that the world has its eyes glued on. And of course, we'll be looking forward to the kind of outcomes that we've been discussing for a while. For example, the meeting with Kushner and Witkoff will be focusing on the Russia-Ukraine peace deal. However, the meeting with Prime Minister Modi in India will be, of course, focusing on the military pact that the State Duma has just ratified. So to discuss all of this, to unpack this, I'm joined by India's former ambassador to Russia, Ajay Malhotra. Ambassador Malhotra, thank you so much for taking the time out, sir, and doing this.
Thank you.
Ambassador Malhotra, my first question to you, sir. The significance of this visit, because, of course, Vladimir Putin is going to be in India at a time when India is going through sort of a tussle with the US. European ambassadors, of course, have also expressed their displeasure at this visit. A couple of them have been voicing their opinions for the last few days now. What do you make of this visit and, of course, the significance of this visit? Because you have been tracking India-Russia relationship for a while, for decades, in fact. So if you can throw some light on the significance of this visit, sir.
Well, I'm happy you started with the reference to the US-Russia high-level interaction that is taking place. As you rightly pointed out, Putin has met already with Witkoff and Kushner, and Witkoff is their special envoy of Trump. He's not there, as a distinguished businessman or anything like that. And so these are meant to be very confidential and trusted persons who are confidential meetings with via trusted persons sent by Trump to discuss issues with President Putin. So no doubt he will also brief our Prime Minister as to what might have been the outcome broadly of the meeting. But it is a good sign. It shows that our two good friends, USA and Russia, are keen to move ahead, and we like that. I think, when our Prime Minister has spoken of this is not the time for war, or, we want dialogue and diplomacy, this is what it is. The dialogue started when the two presidents, Trump and Putin, met in Alaska, and the diplomacy is underway now. So I think we can take some satisfaction in that. It isn't as if some are presenting it that this is all not nice somehow. No, this is the right direction. We want that war to end. We want peace to prevail. We don't want the Russians or the Ukrainians to suffer. And this is the right direction to take things. So if the Europeans are pushing in another direction, I think that's very unfortunate on their part. They need to reconsider where they're up to, what they're up to. Because if they want to keep pressing the Ukrainians on, the Ukrainian, one, they don't have the money. They are going to rely on Americans who will to give them funds to buy the weapons to pass on, which may not happen if the Americans and the Russians reach some arrangement. And their economies are not doing too well, so I don't see that they have the capacity to do anything at the moment. And as a result, Putin and Trump are really Trump has involved them in briefing them and getting feedback, both with the Europeans and the Ukrainians. But the real discussion is between Putin and Trump, and that is how it should be, because these are the main contestants in this case. And we are happy that it's going in the right direction.
Do you think there is a possibility that Kushner and Witkoff could nudge President Putin to perhaps, stop this renewed vigor with which India and Russia are aligning?
I don't think so. I think he is going there only with authority to talk on Ukraine. I don't think he's been given kind of an extraordinary and plenipotentiary mandate by President Trump to talk on all issues. I'd be quite surprised if he were. And in any case, the Putin visit, we have known for a long time. The month and the date, more or less, also we've known for some time. So really, it has nothing. It is just by chance that they happen to have met up there in advance. And the normal thing would be, since you have shown interest, since you have raised this issue, then both sides have briefed each other and kept each other informed. That when Putin comes here, he will inform us. But I don't think this will be the major focus of the visit at all.
Okay. And Ambassador, what do you make of the reaction of the Europeans? Because they were not a part of the discussions which are taking place in Russia at this point in time. Wang Yi was, in fact, in Russia. The US delegation, as you mentioned, Witkoff is, of course, in Russia as well, and the Russians. Ukrainians are not there, Europeans are not there. Do you think one of the reasons the Europeans could be miffed is because, of course, they should have been at the table, but they're not at the table?
They are not at the table because of their own behavior. They are the ones saying, give more money, go and see how we can defeat the Russians, etc. They are pressing on with that line. And then they tell us, but our prime minister is saying now is not the time for war. That is a message that should also go to these Europeans. They need to think about what they're doing. And if you see, they are in no condition really to sustain this war. All their economies are not doing well, and all these three EU3 leaders, UK, France, Germany, etc., they're they're not very popular in their own country by the policies that they're taking. So they need to think about what they're up to. And I mean, they're lucky that at least Trump is consulting them. Otherwise, which is fair enough because they have been partners in this arrangement till now. But I think he's on the in the right direction, trying to sort this out. I think they are making a mistake in judgment and thinking that somehow if they keep funneling in funds and weapons, and all of those weapons have been kind of destroyed by the Russian side, more or less. Whatever all their reserves are finished, so that somehow they'll be able to push back the Russians. That's not going to happen. And especially if the Americans and the Russians reach an arrangement or understanding, then certainly I think the Europeans have no leg to stand on. And if they are ended up in this kind of painted themselves into a corner, it's all their fault.
Right. And in terms of diplomacy, do you think it was a horrible decision on part of the Europeans to, of course, voice their opinion in the form of op-eds? Because the MEA definitely took note of it and said this is unusual.
Well, MEA is being polite, and if they were to, and diplomatic, because they are the Ministry of External Affairs. But as a retired diplomat, I can tell you yes, and I'm not speaking for anyone except myself. This is certainly not merely odd, it's unfortunate. You're here representing your country, and you normally don't comment on third country issues, especially for a head of state who's visiting. I mean, what would they feel if anyone else started writing when their president were to come here to say, in fact, if I were there, I would informally tell them they need to think about what they're doing. And I presume they've been guided by their headquarters. Otherwise, if these three ambassadors have been acting on their own, they need to also figure out are they doing it correctly or what are they up to. So this is not normal diplomatic practice. No, if you have a concern, voice it to MEA. If you don't like that, certainly you can go and tell them. And we have taken a conscious decision. This is our guest being invited, and they are trying to embarrass him. That's absolutely inappropriate behavior, in my view.
Right. And what do you think US reaction is going to be? So far, there's not much that has been said on this front. But what do you anticipate?
I don't see what the US would react about because President Trump is sending his special envoy and Kushner, who is part of the family, to meet with Putin, and we are meeting with Putin. So what's there to wonder about? I mean, in fact, we are helping, in a sense, like they are, to find solutions which will bring the Russians back on board in many ways. And yes, for that you need to sort out the security concerns of Russia and Ukraine, certainly. But that is part of their negotiation. And once it is worked out, I think it's absolutely in order that this should proceed. And in any case, let me tell you, we are a very proud country, and our interests come first. I recall even when President Trump was asked this, he said, "Yes, America first, and you look at your interests and put India first, and then we negotiate." And that makes sense. So up here, yes, it's in our interest. We are not a camp follower of anyone. We are not a regional balancing entity for anyone. No, those things we aspire for. Those are exactly the opposite things compared to where India is and where it's headed. And so I think everyone needs to be a little to sit back a bit and see how they want to handle things because it's easy to be critical of anyone. And at lower levels, you might have some voices, as have been there in the past, in the administration, in the Trump administration. You had voices coming from, the Commerce Secretary level or some other gentleman out there, a senior person of the administration, which is critical of something that India might be doing. But they need to stop and think because if you look at their policy, after all, with Russia, we have a special and privileged strategic partnership, and which means that you're a very special and privileged friend of ours. So how can anyone tell us not to talk to them when they've been a very trusted and very reliable friend? And with America, we have a comprehensive global strategic partnership. And if you see that, where has it led us? Instead, they put tariffs on us. They've been complaining everyone's put high tariffs and has benefited in the past. But right now, in this moment in time, the highest tariffs in the world are on India. They put sanctions on us that you will not buy this or you will not buy that. If you do this, we do. And they themselves are happily buying. If you see, they buy uranium, they buy palladium, they buy fertilizers from Russia. And the amount they're buying this year is more than last year. So, and then if you look at other issues, there are really many concerns out there. There have been issues with our H-1B visa holders. There have been issues with Pakistan. The treatment they're giving. Well, Pakistan is a troublesome neighbor for us, and they know that. And the treatment they're giving to the so-called Field Marshal Munir out there, seating him in their lap and kind of hugging him. So they also need to think about it. So if they talk of how will they view it? Excuse me, India will look to its national interests, and that comes first. And we are not bothered about how others are viewing it. We certainly take into account. And if they have any complaint, we have a whole list of them also about our strategic partnership with them. What we want, I believe, and this is my view, is for USA and Russia to sort out their problems. They are both good friends of ours. We want our relations with both to come back. With Russia, it's already on a normal track, but with USA also. Forget about all these tariffs, withdraw all those sanctions, and if you sort out with Russia, you'll have to do that. You can't go around then talking about oil sanctions and all if we have sorted out the relationship. And the other things, and we want to know what you're doing about Pakistan. We have pointed out how they are, aid, vet, sponsor, and finance terrorism, and we can't just let it pass. That you're suddenly becoming such a close buddy of theirs and not giving us an explanation. What happened to our comprehensive strategic partnership? And what about your continuing to regard them as a major non-NATO ally? These are all considerations that also need to be taken up. So we'd be happy to have some meeting, I'm sure, at some stage after due preparation with the US leadership. And I think if they sort out issues with Russia, then that's a very good thing, if you ask me. Then India, Russia, and USA are on the same wavelength. And then I think there's a lot we can do together. The Americans have been talking of investments. If you look, the biggest delegation they sent was a businessman to Anchorage. They're discussing up there serious matters as to how to progress joint projects and joint ventures together with the Russians. And all this has suddenly come out, if you see. So there's much brewing up there. And we shouldn't be caught on the wrong foot because, somebody's saying that Putin and this and that. No, he's our friend. Russia is our friend, a long standing, trusted friend. We call them a comprehensive, special, and privileged relationship with them. So at this moment, it doesn't make any sense that you kind of step back, especially when they are there for you. And we do hope that it all sorts out between USA and Russia, and the world calms down as a result. And we are back to having normal trade, normal interaction where people move out with all good intentions and to other countries, and not this sort of situation which has emerged due to whatever reasons. So, in all of this, when you look at it, the European position is kind of, I think they are complaining more because they've been left, stranded more or less. Because the two main interlocutors, the two main players, have not invited them to the table because there's no reason. If they're there just to be a spoiler, there's no reason to invite them.
Right, right. But Ambassador, the reason I asked you that question is because, of course, US was hoping with, like you mentioned, with tariffs and, of course, other actions that India will budge, India will give in, would sort of, do some of the things that US wants India to do, and Europe along with the US. India, however, has gone ahead and decided that it wants to, add more intensity to the relationship that it already has with Russia, because as far as the agenda of this meeting is concerned, Su-57s will be discussed, a payment system will be discussed, S-500s will be discussed, manufacturing of S-400s in India will be discussed. So a comprehensive dialogue is going to take place between the president of Russia and, of course, Prime Minister Modi.
Well, you're right up to a point because all issues are discussed, but decisions are taken outside the visit, especially for defense deals. We never take a decision during the visit. It isn't part of the outcome. If the Defense Acquisition Committee has taken a decision, I understand they have on some issues. For example, buying more missiles. We have used up some for the S3, S400s when we had that exchange with Pakistan, Operation Sindoor. So we would need more, and that makes sense. And that decision has been taken. And then we have taken some other decisions about how, when their ships come here, what kind of logistical support we'll give to their ships and planes and troops. And when we go there, what kind of logistical support we give. So these are all normal things. But as regards our position and what we need to do, we, our interests come first, and we don't have to listen to anyone who's giving advice from their viewpoint. What are they doing? After all, look at how much China is buying of oil. What is USA doing with China? They themselves are buying more of these products, which I told you, from palladium, platinum, uh, uranium, fertilizer. So there's a whole world out there of things that they're doing, but they've only put sanctions relating to India and things that India is doing. Excuse me, are they going to pay the differential in the oil and all the turmoil it has caused in the world, in oil prices and food prices? If you remember, there was a stage when everyone was wondering what will happen with various crop prices. So all these are things of concern. So it's not for anyone to, try and bully us. And as I said, uh, we are very proud of our independence of action, independence of judgment, as being, integral to our foreign policy. And our foreign policy is not only of strategic alignment, but also of multi-alignment. We are looking at good relations with many countries. And so, yeah, we would like the Americans to, also appreciate that we have a friendly approach to them. We are not seeking to pull them down in any way. But if you look at them, what they're doing, our industry is suffering in some sectors. If you see, because of the tariffs imposed, the diamond cutting and polishing industry in Surat is suffering. The textile and hosiery industry in Tirupur is suffering. So, like that, there are pockets which are have had to face problems. Our marine exports to USA have kind of fallen by the wayside. The higher tariffs mean we can't compete with countries like Thailand, etc., who get a huge advantage. So, but we're looking for alternatives, and Russia is a friend. Uh, we have a huge uh, trade imbalance with them because of the large amount of oil we import. But again, I don't think we need to get every relationship balanced. People buy and sell when both the buyer and the seller sees attraction in the price that has been agreed to. And for us, it's not that we want to say, okay, the Russian can say, okay, if I raise the price, then you'll buy less oil and it'll be a balanced relationship. But that's not what we want. So, if there are more opportunities for Indian industry, and I think there would be, because the Russians would have a lot of funds available, which they might want to deploy, and they might like to import some items from India. We have certain strengths, and I think that will be the right way to go. And so, if I know right, correct, President Putin is meeting with industry also, and there will be, I hope, some encouragement given to Indian industry to reach out and see, finding it involved with the Russian market. I think if you see their economic performance, it is not all that bad. And even despite the war, in fact, at some stage it was very good. So there are opportunities out there, and I think both sides should take advantage of that.
You're right. You're right. If something could be done on the trade front, because of course, as far as the trade between Russia and India is concerned, India imports a lot more than Russia does from India. So there is room there. The Russian ambassador yesterday talked about it, and of course, the goal between the two countries is to take the mutual trade to by 2030 to about $100 billion. That will be a good move for both countries. But also, Ambassador, my last question before I let you go is, how would China see this?
Well, like Russia, we support and favor a multipolar world. And like Russia, we also favor a multipolar Asia, which means that the powers that we want to see come up are, and in our case, it's not that we want to pull the Americans down, we want to see our own rise. And Russia and China in Asia, I think, are good partners. Yes, Russia has, as I say, no holds barred relationship with China. but that's a name, you know. So they certainly have very good ties with the Chinese, but yeah, they also have concerns, you know, relating to they've had differences with the Chinese in the past. We remember 1962. They had war with the Chinese in 1968, 6 years after us. So it's not, and the Chinese, the war with China is very much in everyone's memory and somehow very fresh out here, and people in Russia also remember. So there are concerns out there. Putin has himself stated it, that one, the lopsided trade that you have with China, where they're exporting raw material and getting back finished products, they would like to benefit from the Chinese wind in their sails, as they say. Point one. Point two, the fact that the Chinese are stealing the intellectual property and using it, especially on defense equipment. And point three, that there's such a large area where the Chinese are trying to move in Siberia and the Russian Far East due to lower population presence there. So these are causes of concern to them. And yes, it isn't that relationship is gung ho all the way and it's some you know, look at it seriously. Russia doesn't recognize the Chinese position on the East China Sea or South China Sea. They've never formally said so. And China doesn't recognize that Crimea belongs to Russia, or that Abkhazia or South Ossetia are independent nations, or that the Donetsk areas, etc. You know, they've not supported Russia publicly ever. They've been, you know, so everyone notices that. And there are more things, but at least these I can share publicly. That they are fissures there are between the Russians and the Chinese also. And even the border, it might be sorted out, but it's a riverine border, and rivers change their flow path. And that has happened because they sorted it out in 2006, 2008. It's been 17 years again that the Usuri River has kind of moved around a bit. So they'll have to address that also. So there are issues that will always be there, and it's good for everyone to know. So there's one is a public projection where you say that, oh, you know, we are best buddy, etc. But in actual fact, you know, in India Russia's case, it probably is actually so, because we find it very difficult to think of a case or a situation where we might have a problem with the Russians. And that is what makes it such a trustworthy relationship. That is what allows them to sell us the, you know, high technology defense equipment, etc. Even if you were to do a gaming exercise, it's very difficult to think of, okay, now why would India attack Russia or Russia attack India? I mean, nothing logical can be put in there to present such an argument.
Right. And Ambassador, let this be my last question to you. You've been a seasoned diplomat. Of course, you still teach geopolitics and diplomacy to students. What would you say of India's diplomacy, especially in the last few years? Do you think that India has come of age and is playing the great power games, as they are called, in geopolitics and diplomacy?
Well, both in our prime minister and our foreign minister, we have very now seasoned diplomats. And our prime minister has been there now since 2014. And before that, as Gujarat chief minister also, he visited Russia thrice, for example, as Gujarat chief minister. And our foreign minister also has been there for a long time, and very well experienced, seasoned diplomat. So yeah, I think our our relations are in good hands. And if you look at from Putin's side also, he's been for 25 years, it's a quarter century, he's been the president or prime minister of Russia. He's met everyone, and not once, many times. There were occasions when people were hugging him, like even George W. Bush and his comment that I looked into his eyes and I found him to be so trustworthy and all of that. And now suddenly, the Europeans are saying, oh, he's some criminal, etc. Excuse me, there's no consistency in some of these arguments. So, yeah, India's foreign policy is doing fine. I think it's in good hands. And we are shaping up also in our neighborhood. I think that's very important. You know, you had issues in Maldives, we sorted them out. It took some time, but we did in the right direction. You had issues in Sri Lanka, we sorted them out. And now you have some concerns in, I guess, Bangladesh and Nepal. And I'm sure, given time, we will also be able to work it out in a way that meets India's interests, which leaves Pakistan. Unfortunately, I guess still you have up the military leadership, and you have the then elected prime minister sitting, in a basement somewhere, the former prime minister. So that's a odd situation. So I guess nothing much can be done on that for the time being, and it's a largely frozen relationship. But yeah, for the rest, I think it's being well managed and well handled.
Right, and that's great to hear. But Ambassador Malhotra, thank you so much for taking out the time and talking to us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.